Okay, a lot has changed this year and shifted, and even a recording that was shot a few weeks ago here in my garage in Minneapolis doesn't seem to match the current mood and place where we are with November Project. That being said, Knox Robinson of the Black Roses came here to visit, to talk about our position in community and run and fitness, talk about running while Black, talk about the similarities and differences between the Black Roses of New York City and November Project. He and I both identify as male and use the pronouns he and his. We both take up space, and this conversation is about how we came together as he called me in earlier this year around the time when the Ahmaud Arbery murder video went live. Just a little bit of framework. I hope you enjoy this conversation, and yeah. We've had so many conversations in the last year or so with November Project co-leaders around the world about identity as a great place to start in a conversation about privilege and race and inequity. And so, sir, what is your name? Tell us who you are.
My name's Knox Robinson. I am, for better or for worse, the founder of the infamous Black Roses NYC movement collective in New York City. I am a writer, former magazine editor. I'm an observer, a chronicler. It was Black and brown people, you know, there was white folks in there, but it was women running with men. It was just diverse in a way that the running that I sort of grew up in and also was kind of dabbling in my private life was super homogenous, super kind of like sexist or separated.
Sure.
And I mean, I love running. I love the act of running. I love the practice of the service of running.
I'd love to hear about how you grew it from there to what it is now.
Yeah, I mean, coming out of that sort of 2010 to 2012 moment in urban running, as we might consider it now, there was really sort of like simultaneous outcroppings of non-traditional running in London, Paris, Copenhagen, New York. There really was like this real hothouse environment of excitement around urban running, or just running in general in urban environments, and that was also fueled along by the rise of social media, obviously, like after 2010, 2012. So what happened was there was an influx of energy and new folks into bridge runners, and I popped off on a marathon that year. And people were like, "Oh, what are you gonna do in the marathon?" I said, I'm gonna make it into the Century Club.
Which is?
The top 100 in the New York City Marathon. If you make it in the top 100, then you're in the Century Club. The next day I went out and I hit 100th place.
No way.
And the thing about 100th place is New York City, the New York Times publishes all the results in its own section in the paper. And every New Yorker checks the first 10 names, Kenyon, 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 Kenyon. And then the 100th place is the last name on the front page.
List, yeah.
And so for the hood to be like Knox Robinson, 100th, yo, people are like, or the industry was like, yo, he's in the Century Club. My man's is in the Century Club.
Right.
And I was like, yeah, you know, I'm in that whole Century Club thing now. So, but everyone after that wanted to know like how you did it. And they started to like vet their little ill-advised workouts with me. They wanted to know, how do you really train? We were in a position where we needed to serve this appetite for what training was. I mean, it was really kind of straightforward in some ways. It was like kind of like traditional workout structure and ideas, but nobody was on the scene really talking about that. I mean, much respect to, you know, elite and elitist running organizations in New York City at the time, but people weren't using public tracks. People weren't running in the streets downtown. I mean, what credit to bridge runners for opening that whole space, but then in some ways the evolution of that was people wanted to know how to become better runners and not just kind of do it as like a, you know, kind of like rebellious act on a Wednesday.
So let me ask you this, because we talk so often with November Project leaders about how things start. Maybe you were a leader that came in and inherited something, or you rotated into a role, and the group's kind of there. And you're not exactly sure the history of how every single one of those people showed up. But as a leader of a run crew that is majority Black and brown people, that comes from what? Your friend group, your music industry, the fact that it's New York City.
That's just how I saw the world. And so if it was half men and half women, if it was like Black brown, Asian, and like a couple white people, that's just kind of how I kind of like see United States history. That's how I see New York City. I mean, much respect to the co-founder of Black Roses NYC, Jesse Zappo, incredibly iconic runner and
coach,
art activist, coach, and just community member in New York and worldwide. And it was really great to partner with her in the early days, and I could kind of bring a coaching acumen and like a structured workout regimen to training or to running, urban running. And she was really great to be like empathetic and really thought about like the peopling of an organization, and I could just kind of be parochial and say, hey, this is the brass tacks, and she kind of like did another kind of work. We kind of like drew our inspirations in the early days from like Latin America guerrilla revolutionaries, and we really wanted to do something sensational but also like identityless, so it could really be about the sanctity of the group, so it wasn't really about creating something that would be a launching pad for social media personalities or you know, like brand gigs or whatever. And so we really did a lot of stuff privately in public, just as an act itself. But I did feel so much kinship with November Project when I started to finding out about y'all's work, just because it was a real seizing of like our cities. It was a real ownership of, you know, rep your city, rep your set. And it really, the public act of who we are is so important. So for me, all these years that have gone by since we first met, I've been thinking about my own position as a Black man running through America's streets or around the world or whatever, and what that looks and feels like as an act. And then I think for you, the visual tableau of, you know, tens or, you know, hundreds of people like working out in a stadium or in a park in public is incredibly powerful and arresting and transgressive in itself. I mean, you were doing it wrong. You were doing it in reverse. Like stadia are constructed for the action that's going on the stage that you buy a big ticket, and y'all was going up the stairs towards the exit in training. Like, performances in stadia are in the evening, and y'all were training there at dawn. And so you were just totally on so many literal and metaphoric levels, like topsy-turvying the entire construct. And like that resonated as much as I endeavored to do something transgressive and problematic in the running space.
But your group in the Black Roses it felt cool. It felt slightly exclusive, and it wasn't about bigger is better, right?
No, we wanted a small
trying
group.
to grow.
No. I mean, who doesn't want to be popular and famous? But like, you know.
But it wasn't about like 200's better than 100.
No, it was about a small group that we could work with over time for safety and for security, and also to like make people feel safe. So it was really creating a safe space, and we really, from the earliest days, we not only centered women, but the group was predicated on this idea of like elevating women's running. I mean, it was a hashtag, you know, way back when. And, you know, sometimes when I reflect on these ideas, they almost seem quaint, but we really were intent on, you know, messaging that like, as men, we're here to not only serve women, but like serve women's running. Like, we are here to kind of uplift, and not in an inspirational way, but we're here to serve as women's workout partners. We're here to serve as coaches or mentors, but also like students, you know, like serving in any sort of numinal way that you might serve someone else. Roses was predicated from the very beginning about, you know, on celebrating or uplifting women's running and celebration of New York City street culture.
So Black Roses and November Project are growing in the early 2000 teens, let's say. And now what you're doing with Roses is in different parts of the country. November Project's all over the world and doing a lot of different things. And so much of the history of these groups is very, very different. And yet, because it was kind of happening side by side, a lot of the steps along the way, we were talking earlier about some of the validation that comes from the industry and all those things, and these groups continue to grow and grow and grow. And with that, and I don't know if you felt this way, but I think the level of responsibility grows with it.
Yeah, I mean, I have to be honest about that. And that's not an ego stroke. Like, you know, I didn't get into it for responsibility. I got into it to like unlock and like get some ideas out and to like destabilize the system. To problematize running. I did it to like empower and like center and just also reflect America as I knew it at that time and running as I knew it could be or should be or would be, you know?
Yeah.
And so I kind of created a group around those values and like thought aspirationally that like the virality of the ideas would just like go out and like, you know.
Fast forwarding all the way up until this year.
I was sort of hiding out from COVID at first in Mexico City. And so it was really bizarre for me to be watching this pandemic and also the civil unrest that was sweeping around the United States and around the globe, indeed, through my phone when I had been engaged in a visceral way with these things my whole life. So, among other things, after the death of Ahmaud Arbery, in the next month, once the media kind of got it out, once like folks found out about it in a mainstream way, video went live, you know, there was a massive outpouring of outrage and grief, and the organization around, you know, running in his memory was a very powerful call to action, especially through running. So you had like his legal team running, you know, 2.23 miles, and you had like obviously run influencers or whatever, but like everyone was pulled into this thing, and you know, I was watching it, and I was having my own response. I was taking notes and like thinking about my own kind of creative experience or what my own reflection on Ahmaud's death might become.
From the November Project side of things, we'd never been political. We never made a statement about anything. We never really prioritized any cause.
You would say you were apolitical?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it started with fundraisers in Boston. No one can stand up at the end of the workout. It was just the workout. Let's keep it clean. And so when that tribute run came up, we had to do it. We wanted to do it, but we also had to do it. It was in run. And so we promoted it to our community, and people were thrilled.
Yeah.
But we had no next steps.
Yeah.
And I think that's what people in the world of social activism need to see.
This brother Harold in New Orleans really wilded out on you guys in a really aggressive and really detailed Instagram post. And like much respect to this brother, like he's a soulful, you know, big-hearted dude down there in the New Orleans running community.
Building his own thing.
Yeah. Awesome. So I called you and I was like, I'm not getting involved with this cat. I knew him through social, but I was like, let me call you because you and I have had a conversation over the years. And I was like, are you good? This is kind of like wild. Like, where's your head? Because the way I remember it, you were kind of like, yeah, I'm kind of paying attention to it. I've got to figure it out. I was like, well, it's not a little thing, but like...
You were so chill about it.
I was chill because it's like, it's a process. I was just like listening to you. I wanted to see where your head is at. And you're like, yeah, I'm thinking about it. It's weighing on me. I got to talk to some of the other leaders and we're going to figure it out. 3 days later, after our call, George Floyd gets killed.
On a Monday.
Around the corner from your house.
Yep.
And then the unrest. And then days after we spoke about the thing in New Orleans, your block was like, the end of your block was on fire. Like literally. It was tragic, but also like darkly comedic that we had kind of like had a nonchalant conversation or like an informed or like committed, but you know, let's see.
Open.
It
was
conversation.
Very open, yeah.
But you know, it's not on our timeline. You know what I mean? Like these issues are not on like our timeline to resolve. Like they're on like justice's timeline. They're on like people's time. Like the time is now. You know, the time was 401 years ago in a way.
The fact that we had never made those, we hadn't been a social justice group, and I wasn't sure that we could turn the ship quick enough or in a meaningful enough way. And like you just finished saying, like the change is slow and the education takes a lifetime, but that doesn't get you off the hook, right? And so small groups organized by November Project members, small groups, medium groups, large groups organized by November Project co-leaders. Some of the work that we've done with outside help for leadership and understanding, again, privilege, understanding the history of certain places. I think a lot of folks in the spring around the Ahmaud Arbery murder and around the tribute run in the weeks thereafter were interested in this conversation about running while black.
No matter what the media hype or even the social media hype after Ahmaud Arbery's killing, is that this sense that runners and people who run related to it, and a lot of folks were surprised that they related to it. Like, this young dude was running, I run, this could have happened to me, this couldn't have happened to me, or this never would have happened to me, or whatever. And I think the parallels and the heartstring intimacy, especially with the video, and just like seeing the slaughter on film, the lynching, as it were, it was so tough to take, but so arresting to people. And I think that the other piece was, as runners and as people who move, we understood some idea that he got killed because he was doing it. It wasn't like it was like random. It was like he triggered it. And if you take it like just a half step farther, you realize like this dude was doing what everybody in November Project does, out clearing their mind and trying to like get a better peace, a better purchase on a better life. And aside from all the historical and sociological levels, got killed because he was running, And I think that's really, aside from the racial injustice of it all, I think that's what was like so stark to people.
Yeah. One thing you talk a lot about in real life, but also online, is this idea of running being a rebellious act.
If you're encouraging this huge community of people to like improve their physical and mental health, their spiritual health, to think about community, you've already like left the apolitical aside, because that is intrinsically political. It's aggressively political because we are supposed to just be sitting on a couch, drugged to the gills, watching TV and ordering everything offline, super depressed off everything we're seeing on social media, and like taking the algorithm into our veins. And if you're getting people up before dawn, that's super political. Yeah. And that's super radical. And so for me, that's why I called you up, because honestly, dude, like I have the expectation that your group is going to evolve and like is going to like, accept some of the political responsibility that's staring you in the face, that's like staring your members in the face, to sort of take the learnings from November Project and extrapolate those to like the larger social strata and the larger immediate community.
Well, what is it that you need to tell the running industry, especially when it comes to privilege, when it comes to whiteness, when it comes to running while black?
I think that I was able to have the space to reflect and kind of come up with a lifetime's worth of insight from my own personal feelings and my own personal countenance where I'm at with it. And I saw something, I don't take too much stock in what you see on Instagram, but I saw somebody earlier this year wrote, representation is not revolution. And everybody is really making calls for representation. People want to be on the covers of magazines, and people want to feel seen, and all that's great, but you got to realize, if there's increased representation in the running industry, let's say, and there's more faces that ostensibly look like you, that doesn't mean that they're going to have your best interests. Sometimes the calls for representation are really just going to put, fake people in charge, or people who like, are going to like stab you in the back, or just like seek out their own interests. So for me, it's like I'm much more interested in like dismantling things. I'm much more interested into like opening things up, like spreading the resources around, and really empowering people or sharing empowerment with people to like think for themselves. I mean, we've had a tremendous atrophy in this country over the past 25 years, which is like generally analogous with the rise of Facebook. But like, as far as like free thinking and decision making and whatnot, it's really, we've lost ground with that, like with every turn. And so really, I think that the freeing aspect of physical movement and running, we know, is like mostly mental, But you got to think, what can that mean? What's the potential for that? I used to be obsessed with this idea that you go out to a major marathon and there's like 50,000 people, 57,000 people on the starting line. And here, we can't get along. We're, wringing our hands about the state of the world. And all these people are like pointed in one direction for one goal. And some people are going to do it this time and other people, but everybody's going in the same direction. And it's so simplistic. But with this running boom, does it really all have to come down to like the pursuit of like a finisher's medal or like an Instagram photo and likes and like some shiny shoes? Or can like we really look at like this great collectivism that we all come together for a race? Can we transform that energy into some sort of social change? Can it have any significance? Can it have any impact as an organizing principle, or as a call to action? And so that's one of the things that's been bothering me for years. But like, what do we do with what we have? November Project is great. You know what I mean? Like, you're around the world and chapters around the world, and it's incredibly like well organized. And this conversation to be able to share out with chapters around the world and people participating in that way, that's like an astonishing amount of organization on a global level. But like, cool, now what? I mean, to take it back to your origins, it's a training principle. Like the body is only going to like respond to stimulus until habituation sets in. And so as an organism, as November Project is an organism made up of organisms. Sure. At what point does November Project reach habituation, and then how are you going to like complicate it or problematize or add a new stimulus? And 2020 for you has been that new stimulus from an outsider's observation.
Just so, and like we were talking about before we started this, I had the bullet points. Let's cover these things. I think we might have, but most importantly, like maybe we don't finish it. Maybe maybe there's no conclusion.
Hopefully not. Right. No, that's the whole thing. It's like, dude, we're just out here asking some questions, right, catching some jokes, asking some questions, and then like sharing the process and sharing the conversation. Maybe the things that you and I both have posed to one another is something for us to take back to our communities or to, fire at the running industry or whatever.
We talk a lot about privilege and identity. We talk a lot about imbalance. I just feel very privileged to have you in our home, in my new home state-ish, and going into the future that is very unknown, to feel connected to what you've built in New York City through Jesse, and to know that you, at least from afar, understand what November Project is aspiring to be or trying to learn to be. Sure. Feels good. So thank you.
No, thank you, and much respect to like your community, much respect to all the November Projects folks that I see like worldwide when I'm traveling, and that's super inspirational. And I just like, we kind of went in it together from the very beginning, and like your group was just so wild and open. And I think that like someone who joins tomorrow is coming for that spirit, and like it's that spirit of openness that's gonna like get us through that. It's like the openness and the curiosity. There's safety in that, and there's sanctity in that, and I think that's what's gonna get us through this thing.
Boom.
Thank you.
Love you, man.
I love you
very much.
That's amazing.